The last speaker is absolute proof that if you don't know what you're talking about, you better sit down and shut up. It's one thing to be a fool, it's another thing to get up and prove yourself to be one. Madam Acting Speaker, I remember getting out of bed very vividly and listening to Paul Keating state that Australia now will no longer be a sort of a giant sheep run and an elongated coal pit. We will be the freest economy on earth. There will be no impediments and products coming into Australia, and that will make us strong economically. I picked up one of my boots and threw it at the wall, and I said, bloody hell, excuse my language, Madam Acting Speaker, bloody hell, now I've got to look after the workers as well. I spent a lot working after farmers and rural people. Now I've got to look after the workers and the trade unions. And that started the relationship, very strong relationship I have with the trade union movement. Now, we can see his handiwork. And we can see the handiwork of the public servants and what they've done to our country. We can see it now clearly. I'll tell you another little story. Little kid, his daddy, had bought a Holden motor car. It was the 12th Holden motor car to come into Queensland. And his daddy was walking around this car and he said, Australians built this car. He's almost jumping up and down. Look, it's got clearance, you know, for our country roads in Australia. We don't have many bitumen roads. Look, it's got room for 6, because we have big families in Australia. None of this frilly, polished wood you get out of, you know, the British cars or, you know, the big Yank tanks. You know, this is a car for the people. This is an Australian car. Australians built this car. He was filled with pride for his nation. And that bloke was my daddy. And I happened to be that little kid watching this performance. Australia can't build a motor car. We've built our last motor car. Australia's built its last fridge. And who is responsible for this? The people sitting in this house are the people responsible for this. They launched on free trade. Now, if you free trade, and when I heard Paul Keating say that, there are only two possibilities. One, you go down into the wage structures of your competitor nations, namely the Asian countries, China and India and these countries. You go down to their wage structures, or you close down your industry. That's the only two possibilities. Well, surprisingly, not surprisingly, we've closed down the motor vehicle industry. We've closed down the white goods industry. The last factory closed in Orange 3 years ago now. I was campaigning in Sydney, which I'll be doing again shortly. The glassworks had gone from the area I was campaigning in. The Bonds underwear factory had gone. A huge number of people employed there. The meatworks had gone, and that is the fault of the government, free trade, and I won't go into that. The motor vehicle parts industry had gone. The aero engineers had gone. 4,000 jobs gone overseas. So, I mean, that's the result of your free trade policies. I defy anyone in this place to point to me a single nation on earth that free trades. And let me be very specific. The last landmark study done by the OECD on agriculture set the value of government to farmers at 41%. That meant farmers throughout the world get 41% of their income from the government. And there are only two exceptions to that. I mean, no one was below 37%. So all of them were pretty close to 40%, their support levels for their farmers. 41% of their income coming from the government. There are only two exceptions, Australia and New Zealand. And interestingly, the country that was on 36.75% was Canada. And you had to say, well, the colonial spock marks are showing here, aren't they? In flashing neon lights. The 3 British colonies are the only countries on earth. Well, they trained us to be colonial genuflectors and mendicants. They trained us that way. And flip a 20-cent coin. On the back of it is the picture of a lady in England. I mean, she might be a lovely lady, and I'm no Republican, but I don't know what an English lady is doing in our coins. But it's about time we started growing up. It's about time that we started growing up and becoming Australians. Now, let's have a look at Mr. Keating's handiwork. And I've spoken about Sydney. I'll speak now about North Queensland, my electorate. They deregulated the tobacco industry, the free marketeers. Now, there is no tobacco industry. We lost over 2,000 jobs at Mareeba. At Myrtleford in Victoria, they lost 3,500 jobs. What for? What for? The dairying industry, we lost 1,500 jobs. We lost 1,000 million in export earnings as a result of the deregulation of the dairying industry. And my area suffered the loss of 1,500 jobs. We were getting 59 cents for our dairy product. After deregulation, we're getting 41 cents. And Woolworths and Coles wrote a letter of thanks to the Prime Minister and the governments of Australia, saying thank you. We just made an extra $1,000 million a year because the price went up to the consumers, 25%, and went down to the farmers, 30%. Fishing, well, partially free trade, partially our green friends at it again. We lost 1,200 jobs in fishing. We lost 2,000 jobs in timber. And while some will argue that, again, that was the closure of the timber industry by the Greens, it was also the fact that we can't compete against the timber coming in from overseas. So timber industry's gone. The wool industry, we deregulated the wool industry. But when it was regulated by Doug Anthony, that great man, the price for wool throughout the world, but we were the world's wool industry, went up 300%. When Keating undermined and then abolished the marketing system, the price dropped down to 1/3 of what it was before. Oh, what a coincidence, Madam Speaker. What a coincidence. Well, when I did economics at the university, it's no coincidence. You, in each case, are selling into an oligopolistic marketplace. There are only 2 people to sell food to in Australia, Woolworths and Coles. And there is only 2 people to buy it from. And you preach to us about free trade. You preach to us about free trade. Well, go and preach it to Woolworths and Coles. And then go and sue your university for the stupid education that they gave you. Madam Speaker, the 70% of the wool industry of our sheep have now gone. We have no wool industry, and yet when Keating deregulated that, that was our biggest export item. It was bigger than coal. We were on $6,000 million a year in the wool industry. Coal was on $5.9 billion a year. So he destroyed single-handedly, with his policies, the industries. Now, if you dumb politicians are not getting the message, well, I can tell you that the Australian people are going to start giving it to you, big time. And all I can say is my homeland, where 6 or 7% of Australia's population live, in North Queensland, we're giving it to you right now. You're down to 30%, both of you. And we're up to around 25%. In fact, with One Nation, we've got more than 30%, more than you blokes. So it's only a matter of time before the rest of Australia starts to understand what you have done to your nation. Australia has made its last refrigerator. Australia has made its last motor car. Hundreds of thousands of Australians have lost their jobs. And, Madam Acting Speaker, you must understand that if you want to buy your biros from overseas, you want to buy your glasses from overseas, you want to buy the leather in your shoes from overseas, you want to buy the cloth in your suit from overseas, then you've got to sell something. And this country's got nothing to sell now. You've destroyed us. There is only two things now that we sell: iron ore and coal. And thanks to the education system and the brainlessness of this place, 60% of Australia wants the coal industry closed down. Now, when I say that, I'm not plucking figures out of the air, Madam Speaker. The coal industry is worth about $100 billion a year to the Australian economy. Exports, earnings. The iron ore industry is worth about $120 billion. The next item down might be gold, might be beef, might be aluminium. They're all about 12,000 million. But they're nothing compared to Big Two. So it's quite right for me to say this country only has two exports now, and 60% of the nation wants one of those exports closed down completely. Madam Speaker, we were told, and I hear my colleague in Queensland, Shane Canute, Member of Parliament for our party, and he said, Mr Beattie told us that if we deregulated the electricity industry, there would be competition in the market and the price of electricity would go down. Well, the price of electricity in Queensland had been $670 for 11 years. Similarly in Victoria, similarly in South Australia. New South Wales hides the figures. We can't get the figures out of New South Wales. But for 11 years, the price was $670 for 11 years. For the next 11 years, it soars from $670 straight up through the roof to $2,400. And it's not stopping there. Well, surprise, surprise. I mean, we were producing it at cost. It was government-owned facility, and we produced the electricity at cost and passed that cost on to the consumer, which was $670. Now it's owned by four people, the electricity industry of Australia. 40% of it is owned actually by a foreign government. The Chinese government owns a number of companies that owns 40% of the Australian electricity industry. And they, quite frankly, can put the price of electricity up to whatever they feel like putting it to. It is a deregulated industry with only four people in the marketplace. And when I went to university, I was told there was an oligopoly and there would be no price determination by interplay of market forces. The price would be set by the oligopolists at whatever price they felt like setting it at. So they decided to set it at $2,400 instead of $670. Well, surprise, surprise. I mean, geez. Now, it was going to bring down the cost of food. Remember that? You know, once we deregulate and the farmers can no longer get a fair price through their marketing boards, those greedy farmers, then you'll get cheap food. Well. The price of I've only got the smallest commodities here that I could get in the time I had, but milk went from 85 cents to $1.99. So we didn't get a good deal on milk. The farmers got 30% less. They were on 59 cents and they went down to 41 cents. They get 30% less, but the consumer paid 85 cents he was paying, now he's paying $1.99. Seems to me like it's gone up about 300% here, 200%, whatever the hell it is. Potatoes, 99 cents, now they're $2.44. And in fact, the margins, when I submitted this in 2008 before a government committee, I picked 6 most common items. Now, I couldn't get the figures for bread or for meat because they're too complicated, but I could get them for eggs and the farmer was being paid $1.40 for his eggs.
The members.
The consumer was paying $4.85 for his eggs.
Expired. I thank the member. The question before the chair is that the amendment